Yeah, so I don't know. You want to warm up with a little news of the week? That's what we.
Yes.
That's kind of what we had in mind.
The big fucking news of just two like himbos trying to do a coup in Venezuela.
Yeah, I don't know if that counts as the big news. I mean, the other thing is the court ruling with the ECB and the Bundesbank. We're not going to talk about that, even though it's big news.
It's complicated.
Just going to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's bad. This is
very unclear.
Germany blowing up the Eurozone. It's very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not like they weren't doing that before, so.
Yeah, but like now it's formalized, and now there's like court documents.
Yeah, it's like done in the most like German sense too, as like because like every German is just like secretly like a legal positivist. It's like, well, if the
law says it,
the German, yeah, if the law says that, then that the ECB can't do fiscal policy, then damn it,
Yep.
it must be the case. I won't question it. Well, like the rest
you
of
can't
Europe,
murder me. That's illegal.
Yeah, and it's literally just like that like episode of SpongeBob where like the entire city is just like engulfed in fire around SpongeBob, and then SpongeBob and Patrick are like, look at it, we saved the day because we said that this is illegal. And I have no idea what this means for the future of like European economic policy, because it is so incredibly dangerous with the Verfassungs, whatever the hell it's called.
Verfassungsgericht, yeah.
Yes, that's the name. Is doing.
But yeah,
but then what's the story with the Silver Court being in Germany then?
Yeah, well, okay. So can someone fill me in? What are the connections to Germany other than the Silver Corp USA guy talking about Germany as his fatherland?
Wait, what?
Nice. Can someone fill me in?
Oh, shit.
I believe. All right, so I'll share the evidence.
Yeah, please.
What I have in front of me, which is his Instagram, Silver Corp USA.
Dude, this guy is a fucking king at it. Yeah, it's such a good Instagram account, and the website is literally like if you had like a stock website of a PMC. It is so bad. And there's like a motivational video at the beginning of like why we do this.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it's like they did security at that like Live Aid thing for Venezuela last year or 2 years
no
ago.
way. Oh my god.
Yeah, it is pretty much just that. It's like so they've been like deeply involved in this for like kind of some time, but like
so it's
definitely not able to overthrow the government with like you and four of your best friends.
So you think they're idealists? Like they saw it and they were like, oh my god, this touched me so much, and I really have to start a coup.
Yeah, it's like that fake discourse around the Berlin Wall of like rock music brought down the Berlin Wall. It's like no one fucking did it.
Excuse me, David Hasselhoff, single-handedly. We all know this to be true in our hearts.
But yeah,
so he just has several posts of him like in a suit with sunglasses on with captions like "grind." A man who never loves gives no hostage to fortune. I don't know what that means.
Me neither.
Can somebody share his Instagram handle? Like what is it?
It's Silver Corp. So Silver Corp USA.
That's easy.
Is
there like
underscores or anything?
No underscores.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So the one in question is
sick videos too.
Like maybe a little bit down. It's him in like he has a backpack on, hat on, scarf. Looks like it's kind of cold. It's tagged in Stuttgart, Germany. There's a Sparkasse building behind him, and the caption's just "The Fatherland."
Oh damn! Oh, I've seen this picture. Wow, but why would he choose Sparkasse?
Yeah, I know. I'm more of a Volkswagen kind of person myself. Yeah.
Well, all the angles on his photos, they're actually like the camera on my computer. They're all kind of like unflattering from below, and he's kind of making the same like stoic look.
Wait, can we just like look at his fucking hashtags? Every hashtag is hashtag active shooter.
I know.
Yeah,
I hope you didn't do that in Germany. And why school? Wait. Why hashtag active shooter training and then hashtag school? That is kind of irritating.
Oh. So I guess he's doing active shooter trainings like for schools, but he has all right. So he has like 20 hashtags in all his posts, but he has hashtag active shooter training and hashtag active shooter. which to me would be a little confusing.
And then #school.
Can I keep them on their toes? Which one am I? Am I the trainer or am I the active shooter?
I mean, he does run like a mercenary company. He can be both.
That is
true. Also, #POTUS security. #tier 1. Got to have that in there.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
Lest anyone think you're not a tier 1 operator.
I didn't think so until I saw the hashtag.
This is like kind of always one of those things that I think that we forget about within like the discourse of how like the U.S. military runs now, that then a lot of it is outsourced, and I think that we assume that then a lot of it is like these like, you know, well-oiled machines of like things that like Blackwater existed and whatnot, who are just these like just evil monstrosities that just get these government checks left and right. But the majority of them are this, like these like quote unquote security companies that then have these generic ass websites run by like one dipshit who had like 3 weeks of Green Beret training and then was like, well, fuck it, like I couldn't make it in the military, so now I'm just going to do a security company in quotes. And they just, I mean, like, what is it? The fucking the Dakota Access Pipeline like hired a bunch of these PMCs to do security for them.
Yeah.
And they were they got in like a bunch of trouble, you know, the company hiring them, but too just for like that they don't like, okay, police are bad, obviously, and police behave horribly. These groups are just a bunch of idiots who are trigger happy and are being used in a lot of like policing measures in the United States. A perfect example is after Hurricane Katrina. They were just like, there were more fucking PMCs on the ground than there were like actual fucking police officers. It's just
this whole time I thought you were talking about professional managerial class.
Both. It is. They are like, it literally is that.
Are you saying he's not professional?
So I assume
private
he's a
military company.
I think project. Or he's a project management consultant.
Honestly, I just thought Nick was misusing the term PMC for like 5 minutes, but since it's your podcast, I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I really like this energy, Loren. When we're wrong, don't correct us. It's our podcast.
No, private military.
Well, it would have been really embarrassing, especially the longer it went on.
I like that. Like, there is a certain poetry to these Instagram posts. I'm just gonna pick one in particular. There's a photo of like a military helicopter, and he appears to be in another military helicopter, like behind it, and they're above just sand, so I don't know where they are. No tag, and the caption is nothing like being in the company of monsters, hell bent on causing serious animosity.
Wait, what?
I don't know what that means. I think he's.
Are you talking about when you get sand on your towel?
Is he referring to himself?
I think he just like use like the way honestly, like I think it's kind of beautiful the way you just kind of use words like PMC in your own way.
Yeah.
I'm causing serious animosity.
It means a real thing. Private military contractor, you idiot. God.
Active shooter training. Active shooter.
I do like this idea. It's a very like American idea of these kind of people who would be in these companies who are just like, yeah, people who live in places where there are sand are all monsters. You know, like Iran, Iraq, Malibu Beach, all of them monsters. So yeah, it's great. You just show a picture of sand and everyone's scared.
He makes a podcast. Did you know that? Or at least he's on a podcast.
Oh.
A very raw podcast with his brother Mark, whatever that means.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I love my brother and me. They're great.
Hey, welcome to your weekly Corner Späti. We have the full gang here finally, I think for the first time in a while, since we've moved into the void of the internet. So it's myself, Nick, joined by Kieran.
Hey.
Rob.
What's up?
Yulia.
Hi.
And we have a special guest, all the way also from the internet, Loren Balhorn, or AKA @Frau_Balhorn on Twitter. How you doing, Loren?
I'm pretty good. A little thrown off by AKA @Frau_Balhorn, but yeah, I guess that's me.
That is you, yes. That's your Twitter handle. That is all I know you by. Since we have been confined to social distancing and not going outside.
This post-apocalyptic, this Mad Max word, your Twitter handle is worth your weight in gold.
All right.
But yeah, so we're coming off of what was a federal holiday yesterday in Germany. Only a one-time thing, and I'm quite upset about that.
Ooh, it's not a federal holiday.
Yeah, only in Berlin.
Only in Berlin.
Oh, what?
Yep.
God damn it. I've already
the only state that matters.
So it was only in Berlin, and only because it was the 75th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, that's dumb then. Wow. Why are we even talking about this then?
Wait, what?
Well, I like the general idea because I think, 3 years ago, there was a holiday because it was the 500th anniversary of the Reformation.
Exactly, Martin.
Which makes me feel very special. Like, they should do more random, it's the... Only on the 90th anniversary of this event is there a holiday.
On the 73, shit, I can't do numbers. You know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, any excuse for paid holidays is a good excuse, and it keeps the loose, keeps you on your feet. It's kind of exciting.
I mean, Germany has mostly only church holidays, so that's all that we do, except for 1st of May. Probably the rest is all church related. So I think we need
Unification Day is
and now we have the
right?
Frauenkampftag. I mean, that's new. I really like that one.
That's it.
Big fan. And I think we should go for more.
But
yeah, more holidays.
Yeah, so yesterday, the 8th of May, was, I guess, only a holiday in Berlin for the end of World War II and the defeat of the Nazis. And big day, big event in history, kind of, shaped the entire 20th century, more or less.
Kind of.
Yeah, and the thing I was just genuinely so surprised about is that, holiday in Germany, everything's closed, normalcy. Not really getting to celebrate it because of quarantine also was not very fun, but... No, what were you gonna say, Yulia? This is always kind of hard with the not seeing.
I know. I'm sorry. No, I went to the monument, the Soviet monument, because normally it is where people gather to celebrate this day, if it's a holiday or not. It's always a funny gathering of different kind of leftist fractions. So you can see everyone basically. You have some Stalinists, you have a lot of Trotskyists. No, actually not. More Stalinists than Trotskyists. What am I saying? You have anti-fascist groups. You have old people.
The loads of Russian families.
Yeah. Oh my God. There was a kid that was completely dressed in an Adidas sweatsuit. Like a toddler.
King.
A toddler. It was amazing.
Was it
so cool?
Was it in the St. George banner colors?
No, it was black and white, but
sick.
I saw a lot of people with a St. George banner, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but that kid was impressive. And this year there was supposed to be a bigger, of course, event because it's the 75th anniversary. But since we're all kind of asked to stay at home, that didn't happen. But I still saw there were a lot of flowers, a lot of rote Nelken. Red carnation, is that the word for Nelken?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, a lot of nice Russian music was played. I was a big fan of that. And in the beginning, when you enter the park, you have 4 flags of France, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and America. Yeah. So far, the atmosphere. Oh, and there was a lady dressed in a pink costume with high heels, and she was sitting in a chair with a laptop, and she was interviewing this guy. And it might have been Russia Today in front of the monument. That's it.
Oh, that's
probably
nice.
Was.
Yeah. They were talking for 2 hours or something. That was a long interview.
Oh.
Spent a long time at the monument.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the weather was nice.
I think that's officially a podcast when it's a 2-hour interview.
Probably. Russia Today podcast live from...
Yeah, sorry, that just reminded me. Recently, I saw someone walking down my street streaming like Netflix on their laptop.
Wow.
With their laptop in front of them while they were walking.
What?
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I love that energy. But yeah, so there's usually festivities. I was at the Soviet Memorial last year just by chance because my family was visiting. I was just like, here's the memorial. And then there was just like, why is everyone here? I'm placing flowers down. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, history happened. So yeah, it is usually a big event. So that's always good, I guess. I'm still blown away that the rest of Germany does not celebrate this.
Well, it's just not a holiday, but it's not a holiday most of the time anyway. It's like a day of commemoration maybe, but you still have to go to work. Even if you go to work in East Germany, I disappointingly found out.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Like,
except for on like a couple years, they gave people time off because it was like the 40th or whatever. But yeah, it was a Werktag.
it was
playing it wild and loose with the
just another
playing it wild and loose with the numbers.
Yeah, just another Werktag in Germany. Yeah, why is that? Like, why do we like choose random years? As the
40, 75.
Well, I mean, it makes sense in that sense of like the every 5 and 10.
Well, but it's not every 5 and 10. It's just randomly. It's like
No, it is.
No, it's not like the 37th anniversary is going to be a big one.
Okay, yeah, true. They should do that though.
Yeah, it's decades and because like what is it? Russia had a massive military parade on the 70th, and then they're gonna have they're supposed to have one today.
Yeah.
I think it's going to still happen, but there is not going to be as many people coming, obviously.
Yeah, Moscow is like really bad at the moment for coronavirus.
Scan your QR code, and you can probably go outside.
I love that coronavirus.
I think Belarus is still going forward with the normal celebrations.
You can always count on Belarus.
Yeah, my flatmate's from Belarus, and just told me that then like the country is just ignoring coronavirus entirely.
They are. It's so good. Lukashenko just keeps going on TV, being like everything's normal. It's like, why do you keep coming on TV?
Everything's normal.
I like doing The Secret for coronavirus.
Yeah, right.
So I would say that this happens every year, but perhaps because of quarantine, I didn't really go outside yesterday. The more of the celebration, or we should say remembrance, or we can say admonishment, happened online and on Twitter this year. In terms of how, and maybe that the medium of Twitter allows for, let's say, people to litigate over what this holiday actually means.
What in one corner? What do we have?
Well,
who's arguing what?
I mean, you have just like there was someone compiled on Twitter at History Ned. This person's name is, I don't know, but they found like the like for people who don't speak German, they compiled the different Twitter reactions from the different major parties in Germany, and so like the CDU, CSU, SPD kind of had that just. Actually, no. The CDUs was different than the SPDs. Were just like they neutrally just kind of go and say that then like that the Second World War ended, was bad, and that then like today should be like a remembrance of the end of World War II. Kind of not really like driving in too much about like the anti-fascism, like some other parties. Like SPD talks about like the Tag der Befreiung, and that then like just fascism, like they did Nie wieder Faschismus. So never again, fascism. And it's like specifically mentioned the Holocaust in their post as well. Die Linke also, not surprisingly, laid into about how the like the Nie wieder Faschismus thing again, of how important this is for them, that they see it as the liberation of Germany, which I think is also like very specific, where some other parties will just say it's the end of Nazism, which is a big difference.
Just real quick, I assume that that our listeners are very educated about this topic, but at the same time we didn't give like any what this day actually means. Because like when we discuss the different,
that would be a good idea.
When we discuss the different, ways of commemorating it, maybe we should say like what actually happened that day. Because
Yeah.
you know there
Well,
are
we should-
different victories during World War II. There are different capitulations, different so
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I guess just on a quick finish with how these different parties reacted, I guess we can also then go from there to then transition. To
Okay,
that.
sorry, I didn't
So,
want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So the Greens just go out and say that then if you don't support the 8th of May, like you're fucked. You're
fucked.
No, literally, it said wer den 8. Mai nicht würdigt hat verloren. So it's who doesn't celebrate the 8th of May loses. And
That's so weird. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing, but nonetheless,
it's some green politician in a suit holding a knife like a flip blade.
But all in all, every major German party at least has dealt with the fact that the 8th of May, one way or another, should be seen as either the end of Nazism or as just a general celebration. The AfD just went buck wild though, because this is they've slowly the mask has been falling off for them, and just a bunch of their party members just trying to make this into a thing about them hey, actually this is bad because socialism took over, and how this was I think Alexander Gauland literally was quoted the other day being this is a day that's bad for Germany because Germany shrunk in size.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, and then someone managed to make this into a thing
God,
about
I didn't. Oh.
I love the position that oh god damn it, I really hope AfD just give them 20 more minutes, this becomes a firmly anti-Silesian party and just starts going after Pomerania and stuff.
Yeah.
This is yes.
And then some members the AfD in EU Parliament just ignored the question of the 8th of May and just talked about gay Muslim Asylbewerber.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It is genuinely wild that then, first off, okay, do I think that some parties, the CDU, I think, just kind of half-assed their way in their fucking tweet? That's just my own personal opinion about that, but just completely ignoring the date or just completely being of the opinion that then, oh, yeah, this is actually bad. They're not even doing, the general reflection that you're supposed to do as Germans now. They've just I don't know. I see this just firmly as being they've cemented themselves so far right wing to begin with that they're just going with as much playing into their Nazism as they can without just openly saying it. But
right, with all those confusing ideas about what this day actually means, it's something about being against the Muslims, as far as I understand.
The gay Muslims specifically.
Right.
Yeah,
okay,
wait. Was the
interesting.
AfD for or against gay Muslims?
I don't know.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It
said queer muslimische Asylbeantragte or whatever. Okay. And then it was a question mark, and then had a member of the AfD with their arms crossed, and it was a discussion that they were going to have on whatever the Nazi version of Instagram
Zoom
Live is.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Reddit live stream, I think. But the
HN live.
HN has live stream function now. It's great. But yeah, okay. So what does this day mean for all the beautiful idiots listening on this call, like me, for example?
Who wants?
I think we turn it to our guest, yeah. Loren. Actually, you might be very good at explaining this.
Well, I was thinking just now when Nick was talking about the AfD. I mean, the AfD is really just representing the mainstream of German conservatism 30 or 40 years ago, and it's really only. It's only in the last 20 or 30 years that there's kind of the mainstream consensus has been established that this is a day of celebration and of thanks and whatever to the Allies and not a day of defeat and shame. But I think, the first time it was ever officially acknowledged as a holiday by the West German government was not until 1970. And the CDU was still opposed to it well into the 80s, I think. But I think the question that it throws up is, I was thinking about this before the show, is it I mean, I don't really give a shit about these questions, but like, can you really describe it as liberation? Because it almost implies that like the Germans were occupied by Nazism rather than like being just the German government, which happened to be Nazi. So I don't know. I think I'm not really that interested in, or I don't really have a what's the word, like. I don't have a stake in these kinds of debates because, like, I'm from Wisconsin, and my German ancestors came after the genocide in that country, so we're kind of like, you know. But I don't know if you really should call it, or if it should be considered liberation because of that fact. But I think it's definitively like the celebration of the Red Army defeating Germany.
Yeah.
I think more than anything else. But that's also something that's also, as Liberation Day becomes accepted as like a mainstream holiday, the memory of the Red Army as the decisive factor also recedes into the background. So I don't know. It's like a two-sided development. Yeah, I just think it marks the Red Army and all of the things they did. Without getting too specific, you know.
But yeah, like I think every time around this year is when that like graph goes viral again of I think it's the population of France getting surveyed. Yeah, of like who was most responsible for the end of, or for defeating the Germans in World War II. And like immediately after, it's the Russians. And now like, 75 years later of having to watch something like American Sniper because that's being considered for an Oscar for some reason. It's like, oh yeah, the Americans did it.
Well, I think the major movie that probably changed that perception is Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking about that this morning, and I did tweet about it, is that then like you can use the movie of Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers to describe the American discourse towards World War II because of how, like, I was thinking, like, I don't know if everyone here's seen Band of Brothers, but the last two episodes deal with then, like, they liberate a concentration camp, and then they have to then deal with the surrendering Nazis. And the way, like, remember, Band of Brothers came out in 2000 or 2001 or something like that, made by, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, so, good Hollywood liberals. But even the perspective in that movie, or the HBO miniseries, is that then, like, the Nazis and the German soldiers are something removed from the fact of what the ideology of Nazism was. And that to me is like incredibly perverted because in the 9th episode they go and they liberate the concentration camp. They're like, look at how horrible this is. And then in the next episode a German officer surrenders to them and he's this, German aristocratic fancy boy. And they then they start, realize like he's like, oh yes, I've been to France, I've been here, I've been there, North Africa, it was beautiful. I loved my time in the military. Oh, wow. And the American soldiers like respect him and they're like, damn, this guy's like a pimp. And the American military, yeah, exactly, yeah, and the American military there was a bunch of things, a bunch of memoirs being like suggested from former SS officers being just pumped through the American leadership being like, you should read this, like the Nazis knew what they were doing. And I feel that discourse has really one, of course, that the Americans won World War II single-handedly without a single Russian life lost. Is how a lot of Americans, or if they know about the Russian thing, they'll just talk about the Red Army, they were brutal and this and that with just completely removing any historiography of it, any just the idea of how brutal World War II just was as a whole for all sides, and just making it into this parade for the Americans. But I really I was really reflecting about that moment specifically. And to be very fair, there is one dude in the episode who then goes and starts hunting down old SS officers, who's cool. But no, everyone else is then in the show telling him how that's bad and immoral. And that is genuinely, I think, the American, the American-dominated view of how we view this day, is that there is a separation between the German state and Nazism, and there shouldn't be because it was the German state.
So
it was the.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to give the overall information that the situation was that the first capitulation was signed in rhymes. Sorry, I don't know why I say rhymes. Rhymes. Which, that was on the 7th of May. But German troops continued combat action against the Soviet, the Red Army, especially like in front of Berlin. So in Berlin, in like Karlshorst and shit like that. So like, even though there was a capitulation paper signed in Reims, it wasn't really the capitulation of the Red Army, all of the troops of the Wehrmacht.
Yeah.
So on the 8th of May, they gathered in Berlin Karlshorst, which is known as the Deutsch-Russisches Museum, to actually, sign the papers of the Kapitulation der Wehrmacht and stop any kind of combat action.
Right.
And since we have different time zones in Moscow, it was already the next day. That's why they celebrate the 9th of May, by the way.
I did not know that.
There you go.
That's kind of adorable for like what was effectively just a massive bloodbath atrocity, but that little fact is really adorable.
So in my opinion, it should be a 3-day celebration.
3 days off. Monday in lieu of Saturday off.
But yeah, actually, like afterwards, like Loren already said, it wasn't really a thing in the Bundesrepublik ever, as far as I know, until like the 70s or 80s. And I think never talked about Tag der Befreiung in that sense. Like I think the famous thing was Richard von Weizsäcker said on the 40th anniversary that the 8th of May is in fact Tag der Befreiung, so a Liberation Day. I think that is the first time this kind of this name for this day was established in the public discourse. So,
was there any kind of like, what was the pressure that was like making that happen? Did people in the West want it? Was it like older people who were a bit more curmudgeonly? Like, did they just fade out? Did their voices fade away from this discourse, or what happened to like change that? Or is there any big event that caused that to happen?
I think old Nazis dying over time.
Yes.
Yes.
True, although Nazis.
I mean, especially West German administrations in the 50s and 60s, like it would have been too uncomfortable because you didn't want to bring up how many ex-Nazis were in the government.
Exactly.
And so Willy Brandt could like do that authentically or like, believably because he had been a resistance fighter. So he then was, he was like a good chancellor to initiate that transition. But in the 50s and 60s, it was just uncomfortable to point out that really the Russians had liberated Germany, and 2, to point out how many people in the government were on the other side.
Yeah,
at the time.
We can't celebrate Liberation Day. It makes all my friends sad.
Yeah, actually, it was actually Willy Brandt who did the first official governmental statement for this day.
Yeah, around the same time when he was like going to Auschwitz. And,
exactly.
Initiating like a major reorientation in West German foreign policy. But before that, the Nazi period was just not really talked about that much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is the 70s in general where a lot of this like Aufarbeitung. Give me an English word for that, please.
There's not really a good word for that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Reflection or whatever.
Yeah, reflection and kind of like digging into like who was a Nazi. Because as I know this is a weird anecdote, but from FU, Freie Universität, that a lot of the Germanistic professors, so like German language and literature studies, they were actually like working under the Nazi government and doing like some, I don't know, whatever, Germanistic research for Nazis.
Nice.
And a lot of that wasn't even, like, nobody talked about that. And in the 70s, there was a book published with the names of the professors and lecturers and everyone, like, in Gesellschaftswissenschaften or in, like, social sciences that was active under the Nazis and working for the Nazi regime. And that was the time where this book was released. So there was this weird moment where Adorno was visiting. Oh my God, sorry.
It's fine. He comes up
visiting FU, and there was this guy, Emmerich, I think was his name, And he was he was supposed to give the introduction speech, you know, and he was a friend of Peter Sondi, which was the founder of the comparative literature department, who was a Hungarian Jewish person who fled who was brought out from a concentration camp because his father was Leopold Sondi, who was a psychologist and a psychology professor, and somehow Switzerland was interested in that. So he was brought out of a concentration camp by Switzerland, and then went to Germany, actually like learned German and went to Germany and wanted to be a Germanistic professor. But then the FU gave him this literature, comparative literature Lehrstuhl department because they didn't want him to feel kind of like he has to work with Nazis, you know, because Germanistic was still very like full of former Nazis and Nazi people that worked under the Nazi regime. So this guy that was supposed to like hold the speech for Adorno said that he was sick because this book came out or something was leaked that he was actually like working with the Nazis. So Peter Sondi instead of that, Peter Sondi gave the speech, as far as I know. I could be wrong with that, but yeah, he kind of like said, "Oh, I can't introduce Adorno. I'm sorry. I'm a former Nazi." Well,
right.
Well, kudos for honesty.
I mean, he didn't say that, of course.
Like, but I mean, there's not. I mean, not to like defend or not to sound like I'm defending former Nazis, but if you were going to bring, like, if you're an occupying power in Germany after World War II, and your geopolitical interest is to normalize society as fast as possible and then bring the occupied territory under the wing of your alliance, you can't really spend too much time prosecuting former Nazis because you're going to take out a big chunk of the professional class that keeps society running. And so you just kind of had to, like, from a purely functional perspective, there wasn't really any other option. You know?
Because the American or the Western allies, let's say, like they aren't doing this for like, you know, mustache twirling, evil Bacchanalian reasons. It's there's a benefit, there's a cost benefit analysis to doing this.
Yeah, and in East Germany, they could just kind of, you know, they could claim the mantle of the Red Army but also not talk about the Nazis among their own ranks. I mean, maybe there weren't even that many Nazis, but like, you know, a large chunk of the, you know, the sort of normal population certainly had some brown sympathies at some point or another. But it's just like, yeah, what were you going to do? And I think only in the process of that generation growing older and a younger generation coming up and asking those questions could those issues be discussed.
I think too that in the sense of like I just briefly kind of was brought up in passing of that. This is me nerding out over foreign policy, but like the end of World War II also serves as a like dismantling of empire as well too. Like empire, like imperialism that we know today is not in any way the way that it is before 1933. And I think that like exactly the point that Loren brought up is that then like the United States and the Soviet Union had massive influence in reconstruction of Europe, but the way that these, you know, that this influence looks like is also incredibly ingenious in the sense of how, like, okay, the United States eventually starts forming NATO after the Greek Civil War and whatnot, and the Italian, you know, Operation Gladio, fun stuff. But the idea then of making your influence, you know, your global influence not be, you know, complete, like, you know, boot on your neck imperialism comes out of exactly this. And this dealing with the Nazis was like one of the very first steps for both sides of that of you know the US and the Soviet Union. And it is a lot of like a lot of liberals defend it for this reason of like why then, you know, there's been so much peace in Europe, this and that, so on and so forth, because there has not been a chance for a traditional style of imperialism to come out of that, you know, since. I mean, remember too, also like Great Britain like lost all their imperial holdings after World War I, lost the rest of them after World War II. Same thing with France. Like Indochina completely collapsed after, you know, with the rise of course, it then comes from, you know, the the anti-imperialist movements of that were kickstarted by kicking out the Japanese and whatnot. So like World War II, not only just like in the sense of that, then it is like a defeat of Nazism. It is like a complete rethinking of how the world, in terms of foreign policy, ran, for better or worse. I mean,
yeah. That's why. Sorry.
I would just be remiss to say to imply that France didn't just let it go without a fight. If we look at Algeria,
of course not. It's also on the exact same day. Literally, May 8th.
Okay, you can have it back.
No.
Sorry,
I don't mean in the sense. I do not mean, of course. I do not mean in the sense that like imperialism just like disappeared.
You fucked up, Nick.
I done goofed. No, but I mean like the way of thinking of then obviously France still had holdings in North Africa. Mali
they
even today is still
They still have overseas what's it called? Overseas departments.
Reunion, like half the Caribbean, New Caledonia.
I'm talking about in the sense of then the formation specifically then of that of like the United States coming up as the world international superpower. And yes, there U.S. imperial. Like I'm not trying to say that imperialism doesn't exist after World War II. I'm not especially not saying that U.S. imperialism does not exist. It does, but there's a massive rethinking of imperialism to then make it not look like imperialism. That we have to you have a massive just about face of then what it looks like. Like remember we've talked about this before about like NATO functions in this bizarre sense that like nations have some sort like sovereignty over their own militaries while then being part of a bigger military project. Like you did not have that really before World War II, and you could argue that then as a part of the Cold War more so than World War II, but still nonetheless is that how do you then influence then these countries without having to then appear as an imperial force like the British, like the Nazis did, with their just steamrolling through everything of Europe. And it's something just simply to reflect on. Obviously look at it critically. I'm not saying imperialism's over. I
think the comparison between like France in the 50s and stuff is like that's a existing imperial power in decline rather than America, which is a rising imperial power being like, okay, how do we do this without fucking up like France did? Is basically. Yeah, I think you're right. There was I think if World War II happened 100 years earlier, America would have annexed West Germany or something. Like it would become this weird state where they shut all the Pennsylvania Dutch into.
Even
what a wild time
even Trump. But think about it though. Even Trump, literally, when he was running for president in 2016, asked this question because a lot of Americans just don't reflect on this. Hey, whenever we win a war, why don't we take stuff back? We used to do it that way. A lot of people don't realize that then there's this sense of imperialism had to rethink itself because a lot of the time it's why don't we just take everything?
The same question.
But it was also
go on, Loren.
Yeah, sorry, go.
Well, I think the sheer level of material destruction made traditional imperialism unsustainable for the European powers, and the United States wasn't necessarily interested in taking up that role. And it also, I think there is something to be said about the Allies were in some way had to talk the talk and walk the walk of human rights and democracy, even if only on a superficial level. You couldn't really go from something like the defeat of fascism to
more fascism.
Reinstalling the world order of the 19th century, because I think there was an understanding among elites that okay, the way we were doing things didn't work anymore, and also we can't afford to do it that way anymore anyway.
Yeah, Britain literally bankrupted itself trying to save Greece as a British protectorate. That is a thing that then everyone forgets about, which is really funny to me. And the U.S. obviously took it over because the U.S. had no infrastructural damage, and no economic infrastructural damage towards that happened from World War II. That's how they ended up also as the economic superpower on top of the influence thing, because they could just simply they didn't have to completely rebuild their economies. I
really do the tactic worked incredibly well, at least almost immediately after World War II, because I've been reading a bit about Japanese resistance after World War II, from the left perspective, and it was as soon as the Japanese brought up that this was a form of imperialism, we are being occupied by the United States, even though I feel their occupation was a bit more in your face than what was happening in Germany. Maybe I'm wrong, but like they all just like they were so easily dismissed as cranks, being like, this isn't imperialism. No, like what happened in Africa in the 1800s was imperialism. This is fine. This is normal. What are you talking about, you crazy person?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I kind of would I wouldn't give the Americans a free pass, but I guess I don't really sympathize with the Japanese in 1945 either.
No, of course not.
Like, atom bomb was not cool, but I don't know.
This is mostly from the Japanese Communist Party, who were also not a fan of like Hirohito or anything like that.
I'm sorry, I'm just imagining this like a weird mix-up of just like you're like a communist, but you're just like also really pro-Japanese monarchism at the same time. That exists somewhere on the internet. I know it does. Why am I even questioning that? But I think that too, like it's also like, you know, with then discussing like the complexities of this as well, there's also like my absolute favorite reaction towards all of this came from one of the redacteurs from
FAZ. Oh my god.
That like, and I think that like there is like a general just like just unwillingness to accept then like that the Soviet Union did something good, and that, you know, just Mr. Philip Plickert, which cool name, like after, so pretty much I'm not gonna you know quote him word for word, but just saying that then he's saying that then like the 8th of May isn't you know, it isn't the day of liberation. It's the 9th of November, 1989. Yeah. And that to me is just like that. Ooh. Like, I don't know where to go to that. I saw that and was just genuinely mad, of course, at first. And I do genuinely think that there is like a massive false equivalence that then a lot of liberals in Germany try to do of being like, yep, the Nazis were bad, but communism was just as bad, because we see this then, you know, in the Baltic countries. You know, we've talked about this before on the show about how like they are much friendlier to remembering the Nazis in their history than they are to remembering then the USSR for, you know, reasons. We're not going to go into it
for nationalistic reasons.
Yeah, but it is like, and I find it really interesting how like German, like not even just German liberals, but I think a lot of Western liberals too kind of play into that, not really realizing how that also like strengthens those arguments of, you know, this massive false equivalence of, you know.
Yeah.
Go on, Julia.
Of the GDR and Nazi Germany. Yeah, definitely. There, I don't see the But the thing,
I've been to the GDR museum. It is way more fun than any other like World War II Nazi museum.
It's true. Topographie des Terrors is not as amusing as the GDR museum.
Like the VR simulator of driving a Trabant.
I know, I've been there. But this actually gives a different connotation to Liberation Day, Tag der Befreiung, because this kind of says, okay, these were external forces that occupied us. Like in the GDR, it was the Red Army, it was the Soviet Union, it was the Russians that did that to us. Like Poland uses that a lot, saying like, oh, we never decided to be communist. We didn't have our own communist state or something. We didn't want this. Like Europe left us alone, because after World War II, they left us alone already in World War II, and then afterwards they left us alone when we were forced to be communist, you know? And this actually gives the Tag der Befreiung, this connotation, and Loren was talking about that like, before, saying like, how is that a day of liberation in the sense of making external forces responsible for what happened here, you know, saying like, oh, first the Nazis came, I don't know, from Austria maybe, I don't know who we blame for that. And they occupied us and they turned us all into Nazi Germany, and we, like, Germans didn't even want that. It kind of sounds like that, you know. And then the Russians came and turned the GDR into the Red Paradise, you know. And only after that, when the wall came down, we were finally free and ready to write a new a narrative for our nation, which is what Poland is doing. But Germany kind of like works towards that sometimes as well by not speaking about these things and making it a thing, saying, "Oh, we didn't know about that." This like typical thing, like, "Oh, the Germans didn't know. They didn't know what they were doing."
I think we mentioned on the show that now it's officially a EU-wide identity. Was it a year ago, 2 years ago? There was, I don't even know the details. It was just a statement or some sort of declaration passed by, since the last EU election about like what Europe is, and there was all this equivalence between the Nazi regime and the communist regime, and that Europe freed itself from both.
Yeah. The European Union kind of like routinely puts out those they're not legislations, they're like statements basically from the parliament being like Nazism was bad, but also
it's just an FYI for all the haters out there. You just reminding everyone.
But so I guess that kind of leads us to our next question for our lovely guest, Loren, of like what exactly was the motive, or like how did this false equivalency, or even just the equivalency, how did this come about? Like what's the driving force there?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I really have a good answer to that, but I think there are different forces or different people pushing that argument for various reasons. Certainly for like the conservative, like right-wing conservatives in Western Germany, it was a way to both focus on the Cold War and deflect guilt for the Nazi period. I think like for someone like Hubertus Knabe, like the former director of the Stasi Museum and one of the main like advocates of this argument, along with Jurek Babarowski.
Oh yeah, I know him.
Part of it's just like personal trauma, dealing with their own ghosts as young people, or like maybe things that happened to them. But I think it works as a political and discursive tool today, just to delineate a moderate sort of like liberal corridor in which politics is allowed to happen, that both excludes the far right for being, racist and kind of unsightly and embarrassing or whatever, but also excludes any kind of socialist politics. Like the political utility of it today, I think, is quite clear. But it's still, it's definitely a contested argument. Like I think sometimes that people on the left have a tendency to exaggerate to what extent the mainstream portrays like an equivalency between communism and Nazism. Like certainly the numbers alone of like people killed speak for themselves. But I don't know. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but I was thinking about this before we did the episode. Someone like Hubertus Knabe, I think part of it is just because like he found out that one of his friends was like an EM and was spying on him and his wife, and so he's just like, there's a real personal note to it as well.
So what's an EM?
Like a inoffizielle Mitarbeiter, just like a Stasi spy.
Exactly.
That was like 1 in every 10 people in East Germany. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also something. Like when you obviously the Berlin Wall wasn't good, and obviously people spying on their neighbors wasn't good. But when you look at the whole thing in context, I think it's very clear that the society that existed in East Germany was vastly less repressive and much more humane than society in Nazism, and the occupation, or under Nazism, the occupation by the Soviets, for better or for worse, was a historical consequence of the rise of fascism, and thus
that's
at least it was better. At least they beat Hitler, I guess I'm trying to say.
That's an interesting.
That's a pretty good thing, though. I haven't done that.
That's an interesting point, because especially since you brought up Babarowski, and he is like a person in the tradition of the Historikerstreit that started in the 80s at FU. with this, where this announcement where this comparison was for the first time kind of like tried to be like put into a theory, like an historical theory, saying that, and I'm repeating this, that actually Hitler's concentration camps were just a reaction to Stalin's gulags. So that is like the argument.
Right. That the concentration camps were inspired by the gulag system.
Yeah, inspired. Yeah, exactly.
But I think the more sinister note to that, and Boborovsky, I mean, I know he's like a right winger and stuff, but he's still like one of the best professors I've ever had.
I know,
in terms of, he's a great lecturer. Like, he's crazy, I think, probably, but he's a great lecturer. He's like, he at one point, I think, was a serious historian.
Oh yeah,
who has kind of been lost in like this personal agenda of drawing an equivalency between Stalin and Hitler. Yeah. That's like his main point.
Yeah.
But I think there's also kind of with Ernst Nolte, who's the grandfather of all of this, there's certainly like an anti-Semitic underpinning to the whole thing, in that he kind of suggests that the Holocaust was also a response to the barbarism of the Russian Revolution, which, was led by Jews.
Yeah.
And so there's those kinds of narratives both dabble in anti-Semitism and also serve to somehow excuse or at least relativize the crimes of Nazism. But I think most of those people, I mean, even Boborovsky, like, he may still have his professorship, but his institute was canceled. I mean, these people, they're even kind of, at this point, they're on the margins in mainstream history writing, which doesn't mean that, like, Marxism is now the dominant framework.
Damn.
I don't know. I was listening to a lot of PragerU this week, and I was told that is.
Wait, I want to not to dwell on the academic stuff, but I do think it's worth pointing out that we have Loren mentioned the 80s, when there starts to be a shift, maybe a begrudging acceptance amongst the like center right in West Germany about at least calling something Tag der Befreiung, and then we have a date. After 1989, sometime, where there's a new idea of Europe that's based around this kind of equivalence between the Nazis and the Soviet Union, and kind of a befreiung from both of these forces to create this new Europe. Loren, maybe can you explain just quickly what the Historische Streit is, maybe when it took place, and how that kind of laid the groundwork for these debates?
Well, I mean, the Historische Streit began in the 1980s with this guy, Nolte, putting forward, like, this argument that we were just talking about, that you have to view, like, basically relativizing the crimes of Nazism by portraying them as, one, a response to Soviet aggression, and specifically the claim that the concentration camps were kind of inspired by the gulags, or that it was the image of the gulag that gave the Nazis the idea of building this camp network in the first place. Which, like, I don't know, maybe like Goebbels, but Himmler, Goering, one of these people thought the gulags were an interesting project to develop in Germany, but it's a fundamental, like, shifting of the blame, or of the genesis of fascism, off of Germany and off of Central Europe and onto the Soviet Union. And I mean, at the time, I think consensus was that side of the argument lost, that Habermas and all of these liberal historians who answered Nolte won the debate, and certainly that view is not the mainstream view in official German politics or academia, but it still exists on the right-wing fringes. And like what I was said at the beginning of the show, like, everything that the AfD said yesterday would have come from the right wing of the CDU 30 years ago. There's been a general convergence towards the center in Germany on all kinds of political and cultural and social questions, including German war guilt, which then forces people who used to still be on the right wing of the mainstream 30, 40 years ago into a more radical formation like the AfD. But they're really just, like, the AfD are jerk-offs, but they're not really spouting off openly neo-Nazi propaganda. They're really just saying what used to be mainstream German conservatism, but the CDU has moved so far to the center that they no longer have space in their former party. And I think the wider question of the equivalence of communism and Nazism outside of Germany, I think, is much more common in the countries of the former Eastern Bloc, in a place like the Baltics. But because they can at least some semi-plausibly claim to not have been guilty of either, I guess I'm certainly more sympathetic to the Latvians or the Lithuanians. Not sympathetic to the Latvians and Lithuanians that fought with the Waffen SS, but they can make. They were invaded, right? Eastern Poland and the Baltic states were secretly divided up between the Soviets and the Germans long before the German invasion of the Soviet Union, and they were occupied and forcefully integrated into the Soviet Union. There's a legitimate historical claim there, whereas I don't know, man. East Germany, they kind of had it coming. After you voted, obviously collective guilt is a ahistorical and problematic kind of way to see the world. But to the extent that it's a real thing, the Germans are collectively guilty in a way the Latvians are not, I would say.
Yeah. I just wouldn't excuse the Latvians too much because they were quite eager to start with putting Jewish people, the Jewish population, into camps before the Nazis were even there.
Oh,
so kind of already preparing for the Nazis to arrive.
Sure, and that happened in Poland in many instances as well. Which of course then nationalists in those countries will deny that and say that that's Soros propaganda or something. But
the general kind of Sorry, go on.
Well, anti-Semitism was just a generalized phenomenon around Europe at the time, perhaps particularly bad in Poland and Germany and a few other places. But Hitler and the Nazis were the first political formation to take that widespread anti-Semitism and turn it into a political program with state power. But, that probably wasn't going to happen in Poland or Latvia without a German invasion.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the Latvians are not very good with, processing what they have done.
Their remembrance culture is insane.
Just saying, the fucking 15th of March, where they still march with voluntary legionnaires that joined the German legions as being, as they say, freedom fighters for Latvia. They still do that. They still have a lot of...
it's okay. That's pretty fucked.
They don't really work through or reflect on their collaboration.
The general anti-Semitism across Europe was a massive problem. I think there's kind of been a bit of a revisionism, or just an ability not to focus on this part of the history, but there is a reason why there was a segment of the French population that didn't put up a huge huff when the Germans came rolling in and established Vichy France, and there is a reason why the Americans didn't necessarily believe about the Holocaust was happening, even though nearly every Jewish person in America at the time was saying this is happening, and then they find the camps at the end of the war and they're like, oh yeah, cool, okay, whoops. It's definitely nowhere near to the same horrifying extent as what the Germans did, but anti-Semitism for millennia has been the backdrop for all of Christendom.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is kind of just a weird example, but I was just thinking about this, and when we've covered other countries, we focus a lot on the bigger European countries that then obviously everyone more or less kind of knows what's going on in them who listens to our show, but let us not forget that the vice, whatever the position is, I guess to be the person below the prime minister of Greece we've talked about, of Adonis Georgiadis, is literally used to sell anti-Semitic books on Greek TV, a few years ago. It's not even that it's an ideology that then just disappeared. Even go to
he has not had to apologize for those old tweets.
Because to be fair, he's one in a country that no one pays attention for unless they're left-wing government being bad. Or like look at Hungary and stuff like that. Only when like anyone only really cares when it's just like the election, that not even the election, but the appointment that Orban did the other day. But that'd been going on for how many years, and just like the rampant anti-Semitism in that government's insane, and just pretty much completely ignored by the general populace of Europe. Like no one's really hammered Orban on his anti-Semitism. Up until he the anti hiding it as I'm against globalists and anti-Soros stuff is just like the American way of doing it, but it still is just a rampant ideology throughout a large portion of Europe. If you talk to people then who are just like, I don't know, like normal. I don't know how to describe it without sounding bad, but it's like anti-Semitism is quite normalized in Europe.
Yeah. And then there's also as well, while we're on the topic of paying attention to the smaller countries and the legacy of World War II, I want to remind everyone that Ireland was basically the poor Nazis Argentina. There was just, because I'm an Irish person of German descent, and I had to really, really make sure that wasn't where we came from.
Loren, I want to ask something. It's kind of backtracking a little, but I wanted to make sure we talked about it because you mentioned that May 8th wasn't, it was still a Werktag in East Germany. What was but still, anti-fascism, defeating the Nazis was a huge part of the national culture, national narrative, I guess, if you will. So what was if not May 8th, then what was that narrative in the former East Germany?
Well, May 8th was still celebrated. It's just people still had to go to work, but that probably had, at least that is after after, I forgot when the 5-day week was introduced in East Germany. I think it was in the late 60s. After the 5-day week was introduced, several political holidays, including May 8th, went back to being working days. When there was a 6-day work week, they did get May 8th off. But May 8th was still an important day. It's just people went to work, but you still laid carnations at the monuments and maybe went to some gathering or something. And some local Kreisparteisekretär gave a little speech. But yeah, the East German narrative was, in many ways, kind of the, I don't want to argue for equivalence between East and West in the Cold War either, but the official slogan was something like we're the victors of history. So there was a similarly ahistorical narrative of basically East Germany as the anti-fascist state, where the anti-fascists took power, unlike in the West, where the Nazis were allowed to continue ruling under democratic guise. And there's elements of truth to that narrative, as well as a great deal of embellishment. And I imagine, especially because you couldn't talk about the treatment by the Red Army of German citizens, that was officially taboo. I think many people in East Germany had their own very negative memories of the war and of the immediate post-war period, for which there was no space to talk about. Maybe that also led to festering right-wing sentiments among segments of the population. I don't know. But yeah, officially, it was a great day, and the East German state was the official, the institutional heir to that entire legacy. Also meaning that then in accounts of Nazi repression, the Holocaust was downplayed to some extent, and the repression of communists and social democrats was played up. Yeah, history was always used as a weapon by whoever's in power to interpret the past in a way that's favorable towards those ruling in the present. But I think in general, the East German tradition is probably, aesthetically, it's definitely better, but also politically, it has more merit.
Yeah.
Wow. History sure is in books. Do you know what's like a book? A magazine. Jacobin DE Jacobin Deutschland has recently launched, and I'm very excited as someone who can't read any German. So that's really cool. And Loren is writing for Jacobin DE, so that's really cool as well. That's why we have him on the show, because if you're not reading it, I've seen the stats. Some of you are Germans who listen to the show. If you're not reading Jacobin DE, you should. Loren, can you give us some good kind of teasers about what's in the magazine so far? What's in the pipeline?
You can't read German?
I can't. No. Do you not know my persona? I am the bugbear of every Berliner. I refuse to learn German English speaker who lives in the city.
Oh god, that was the most fucking condescending way I've ever heard anyone say that. That was awesome. That should motivate you.
No, I deserve it. I'm an absolute piss pig for this. No, I deserve that.
That's some real German energy too.
It's not like I've never met someone who doesn't speak German before, but doesn't it just drive me fucking crazy? I mean, I think I lived here and did. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, back to the product I'm here to promote.
I'll break the kayfabe. I am actually learning German. Don't worry. For anyone who's actually concerned about that. But my character is fuck the Germans.
Well, fair enough. I mean, that character can go with speaking German.
Yes.
I feel like I'm walking, talking evidence of that. But no, so Jacobin, it's not Jacobin Deutschland because theoretically, we also have articles about Austria and Switzerland. But so we haven't really found like a good way to call it. Like I just usually call it Jacobin DE, but yeah, it's a German language version of Jacobin.
Jacobin Chad. You got to do it that.
Yeah.
Chad Jacobin. I know that there's technically Dach, but change it to Chad.
Like we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I speak German, but I'm not the fastest. We're just, we're running a lot of translations from the American Jacobin, but the first issue, which came out on May 1st, is majority original content. I think there are maybe 3 or 4 articles translated from the American Jacobin, and we're trying to do the same, almost I guess the same thing that Jacobin does for the English speaking world, in that we want to put out socialist ideas in a way that looks good and sounds good and tries to speak more to the mainstream or the middle of society. I'm one of the editors, and I have a piece in the first issue, and otherwise I'm largely responsible for like just figuring out what we want to run from the American version. But I think, I guess I'm really happy with it so far. I think Germany needs something like this, and the response we've gotten so far is, in my opinion, surprisingly positive. I guess I should talk about the first issue or something.
I have another question just because you mentioned it. You said you want to, copy or adopt the English language Jacobin's kind of mission or the way it situates itself on the left publications. How do you think that mission is like? How does that fit in the German political context that we just spent partially an hour talking about? Like, what is the How is that different in the U.S. and in Germany, and how do you see Jacobin fitting in specifically? For example, what gaps need to be addressed or things like that?
Well, I don't know if there are gaps that need to... I mean, I don't know if I would use the word gaps, but I think the way Jacobin fits in, or the major difference between the two language areas, whatever the word is, political and social context, is that in Germany you have an existing left sphere and left ecosystem, both in terms of publications, organizations, autonomous centers, whatever. Like you have a much thicker, left ecosystem, but it's nevertheless one that's pretty marginalized and I would almost say ghettoized. So you have a lot of stuff, a lot of people talking to each other or talking to themselves, whereas in the American context, there was nothing. Or hardly anything. And so I think the difficult task of breaking out of established left echo chambers was more pressing in the United States when Jacobin was founding, but that thus also, I don't know if it was thus easier to do, but came more naturally. Whereas I think in Germany, you still have, for better or for worse, a fairly large ecosystem of publications and organizations that, however, I don't want to say that they're bad or that they're lazy, but just that they have their established traditions and they struggle more to break out of those or grow out of those.
Yeah.
Also because there's less of a pressing need to, because you still have whatever's left of the left ecosystem of the post-war era, and then in East Germany, whatever's left of East Germany.
Yeah, I just wanted to like quickly add in that I'm not going to name any names, but I had an interview actually at one of these German publications, and they were super nice, super cool, but they had a massive problem of trying to break out of the mold of their traditional media, and they they're like legitimately were like saying like to me like that they were struggling of trying to like, you know, get younger people to come on. One, because their name of who they were associated with before the fall of the wall. This narrows it down, obviously, to pretty much like two or three publications. And this doesn't mean that they do bad journalistic work. I think as a term of like their newspaper stuff that they do, fantastic. But they've been trying to break into like other avenues and just hasn't been working because they just didn't. I don't think then from that traditional mindset they understand how to necessarily like do it. And the thing that I think is like, and to be fair, like they don't need to. Like I mean, maybe they do in the sense of like trying to like save their publication, which it does suck that then like some left wing papers and magazines in Germany are like, you know, having to, you know, cut themselves because they just don't do well. Like Taz, for example, is going entirely digital, you know, because you know.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they're going completely digital next year, which is like, okay, easier, but then at the same time, like that does put people out of work, this and that and that. It does, you know, change the workload and so on and so forth. And the thing that I got my first issue of Jacobin the other day, and I was first off just blown away by how big it is. And by how nicely put together it was.
It's just thick paper, man.
No, I know. But aside from that, of just simply in the sense that then, like, I didn't feel gypped, you know, with, like, only getting, like, I was legitimately expecting, like, when you get other magazines, it's, like, you know, thick and flimsy, and it'll have, like, you know, 5 articles, and that's it. But it was, like, actually, like, you know, chock full of you know, things of different topics. I mean, like, the main topic, I think, of this issue is, like, what social democracy, right, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But still, nonetheless, so that then it did feel like, for at least looking at German media, and maybe it's because I'm used to the like Jacobin in the U.S. a little bit beforehand, but it did feel like something that then like doesn't already exist in this country that then isn't trying to like reinvent itself either, because they have tested the waters in the U.S. and it is something that then that Germany does need in terms of I think like of a left wing voice that isn't these old voices like you were saying.
Yeah, so like for me, like coming from Ireland, where like we're kind of encompassed in the same kind of media sphere as the UK, and for like a lot of my time living there, it's like the most left wing thing was The Guardian. Which just pour one out for my boys, F's in the chat. But like it is like was mind blowing to come to Germany and be like, oh, you guys have like sufficiently left wing like daily newspapers, and then you realize, oh, you're facing the same problems like all newspapers are facing. Oh, I see.
Well, and except for worse, because your readership was already of a smaller to begin with.
Of course.
No, I mean I think it will be a bit of a bloodbath in the next like. Maybe bloodbath is too harsh of a word, but I think a lot of publications are going to be encountering existential financial problems in the next few years, but until they're gone, they're still going. You know, as long as they're still here, there's not that pressure to. I don't know. I hate to use a word like innovate, but innovate,
disrupt.
Yeah, exactly. Which, in some ways, is kind of what. I mean, I hate all those words, but that's kind of what Jacobin in the United States did. Is it disrupted? Oh
god, I'm just thinking about. I think I saw you tweet this out like the other day about like reflecting on like what American left media looked like before Jacobin. Ooh, that was
really bad.
It was pretty much just like blogs and like a few really horribly run news. I mean, like, and then
when I was in college,
purity politics at that point between all of them, which was even worse.
Like when I was in college. I don't know who did it, but someone would anonymously leave stacks of the People's Weekly World and Mim Notes at the university library. And People's Weekly World, which was the Communist Party's official paper, is now just a website. And Mim Notes, the Maoist internationalist movement, rest in peace, best left publication of the 20th century, they both, they looked like they were made by old dudes, and they were. Even if occasionally there was maybe an article you wanted to read, there was nothing being made by like young people who were not born and bred in like this little left echo chamber. And once someone started doing that and did it well, I mean, very quickly it kind of mopped up the competition. I don't know if that's not what I expect to happen here, because all these publications are established and have readerships that aren't just going to jump ship and read Jacobin instead. But I hope that because of the way we write, and I think also because of the topics we choose, like making the first issue be about reformism, that will maybe also attract different readers who aren't reading established left publications, because that's always been, for many years, it's been my feeling here, is that the abstract ideas that the left represents are actually quite mainstream in Germany and almost common sense among at least a large minority of people. But the left doesn't reach most of those people, at least not in an organized sense. And I'm hoping that we can kind of expand the pool of people who openly identify as socialists by approaching them through another means and with like a more relaxed approach to politics.
You're definitely turning some heads among young online German influencers like Ulf Polschardt.
I don't know. I thought that was great. I would retweet that tweet every day till I die. So it was awesome.
Do it, King. Just keep retweeting and then retweeting.
He did write a book called Cool, so you know that he knows what cool is.
No fucking way.
Well, I think we need to have a sense of we need to be sober about these things. Like, obviously, somebody like Polschardt is not a Nazi, right? I mean, and he's maybe a doofus, and maybe he leans to the right. But I think that the left needs to be much more relaxed about how we engage with these figures. And I think there's another element of the German left that I think is not so healthy. It's this kind of allergic, almost childish, not childish, but allergic reaction to anyone to the right. Yeah, infantile. I think maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
I think this kind of like alarmist. Wrote about this. I don't know. I don't remember who though, but.
But yeah, this very extremely purist approach to interacting with mainstream political figures. And I mean, obviously someone like Ulf needs to be challenged and criticized. But if you don't have the confidence in your ideas to like interact with people on that level, without fearing some kind of like contamination, then you're always going to necessarily be reduced to the segment of the population that's already keyed into your ideas and your publications, which is pretty small and shrinking. So that's just, I don't know, like, to me, it's, ever since I stopped, like, viewing the radical left as the only thing I want to do in my life, I have other hobbies. And so if I'm going to do politics, if I'm going to, like, publish political things, I want it to be as good and be read and reach as many people as possible. Otherwise, it's not really worth it, at least in my opinion. I don't get some kind of like deep psychological, not anymore at least, like deep psychological satisfaction from being involved in the left. So whatever we do, I think we should do really well and with maximum impact. But yeah, I thought it was great that Ulf was into us. You should buy an institutional subscription.
I have just one little thing. I'm sorry, I'm just cruising through Twitter right now and seeing that then... Did anyone see the White House's tweet from yesterday?
I had a question about Jacobin, but what was the tweet? No.
It was because this is about the remembrance of yesterday. They just completely omit that the Soviet Union did anything. On May 8th, 1944, America and Great Britain had victory over Nazis. That was it. That was the tweet. Yeah.
Well, at least he didn't include France, because that's always farcical.
So, yeah, sorry. I just had to, just speaking of just, how, remembrance culture has kind of, just been plagued so much. It's like... if anyone thought that Donald Trump is like a Russian, asset now, completely remove that from your thoughts, because he would at least, in that case, he would have at least, mentioned at least Russia, if not, falsely equating, Russia to the Soviet Union.
It would be kind of funny if Trump was tweeting that the infographic from the French surveying the French population and stuff.
Damn, this sucks. Leave my homies out.
So, Loren, just to talk a little bit about what's in the first issue. So, one thing that I saw on Twitter, which I also saw in tweets inside the first issue, was maybe, I don't know, people poking fun at Jacobin, asking who is the Bernie Sanders of Germany. And there was a widespread in the betting markets, but you do have a long interview with Kevin Kühnert in this issue. I mean, you didn't do the interview, but it's in the issue. Is there anything? Does this mean Jacobin has picked the German Bernie Sanders? How do you think that reflects? Since we already talked about the American versus German political context, is there any significance people should read into the interview with Kevin Kühnert?
I like how Americans can only view politics in the sense of the NFL draft.
Well,
I think they should have taken Mariota with first interview, but
well, I think that I can't speak for the rest of the board on this because I think some of them would get mad at me. But the Bernie Sanders of Germany is totally and definitively Oscar Lafontaine, and then maybe a little bit Gregor Gysi. The thing is just people don't want to leftists here don't like that because I don't know, because they're not radical figures. But the fact is, neither is Bernie Sanders or Jeremy Corbyn. These guys are just kind of avatars for the rebirth of the left. And I think Kevin Kühnert, I don't know. I think Kevin Kühnert is probably a decent and honest person, and I thought the interview was pretty good. But the whole point of the issue, the issue timing kind of fucking sucks because, Bernie gets kneecapped and then we come out with an issue about social democracy, kind of bad timing. But the idea behind the issue was that if we want to be a left that can win, we have to look back at the last time that the left won in whatever limited sense it won in our own political traditions. And as much as I would like to look back on the Communist Party, and I do think that the Communist Party is a very interesting historical formation and has lots of really inspiring phases and figures in it, the closest that the left ever came to being hegemonic in Germany was under social democracy, both before World War I, after World War I, and after World War II. But it's not sexy, it's not revolutionary, and so it's not something that the far left really would talk about that much in Germany. And we kind of wanted to not specifically, but we wanted to, at least when actually I don't know if it was my idea anymore, but whenever we came up with the idea of having the first issue be about social democracy, part of the point was taking power seriously, taking strategy and history seriously, and not just focusing on whatever is cool or in, but trying to take a longer view of things. Because of that, we've oftentimes been sort of accused of being a magazine for the Jusos, for the young socialists. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't think that any of our editors really have that much hope that out of current social democracy any kind of revival will emerge. But that if we're taking a serious approach to politics, we have to be open to every possibility and be willing to dialogue with anyone and any social force we think could maybe be part of that rebirth. And I think that maybe, I don't know, I was cautiously optimistic about the new SPD leadership. I think the last months have shown that was maybe overly optimistic and that politics in Germany is just suffocating and dead. But that's being a socialist in the 21st century has to mean being open for all kinds of developments, because if you told anyone 5 years ago that Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders were going to lead to rebirths of the left in the Anglo-American world, they would have said you're crazy. So Kevin Kühnert becoming the next Jeremy Corbyn is similarly crazy, but that's not impossible.
Yeah. This kind of, just as for anyone who's listening who hasn't subscribed to our Patreon, we did kind of try to discuss that a little bit as a topic amongst ourselves, and it's a hard thing to bite off, just simply put. And how I think that then because I think as leftists like to look at then how we'll be so infatuated with the sense of an example like Podemos or Syriza that happens, but it's look at the political projects that like where then you have these really quick left-wing takeovers of the government. Like they're in like some of the most like chaotic democratic systems in Europe, and they cannot, like, something like that would never function in Germany or in the United States or in the UK and stuff like that. So like we did like kind of try to like, maybe try to like hash out then at what like what would it look like what does it look like in Germany, what does it look like in the sense of like the UK and the US, because they do have like relatively, I'm not going to say identical political traditions, but there is like a general sense of like I think that the left finds himself in similar crossroads in these three countries, and some other maybe sense of other places in Europe, where it's like in Spain or in Portugal or in Greece, the left is going to obviously react in a complete different sense because of the historical, political, economic factors that then are all playing at play there. So,
well, in Germany, I think in many ways, like theoretically, Germany would be best positioned for some kind of, not necessarily best positioned to have a mass socialist movement, but if some kind of mass socialist movement emerged, it would be best positioned to actually take and retain power and force through its program, because you still have a large export-oriented industrial sector with extremely high levels of trade union organization. So really, from like a classical Marxist standpoint, we're in great territory, but most of the left is not really oriented towards those sectors of society. Maybe whatever's left of the left wing of the SPD, and here and there scattered groups within Die Linke. But most of the left in Germany is oriented around protest politics. Maybe they vote for Die Linke, maybe they're in Die Linke, but Die Linke doesn't have anything approaching like a coordinated strategy towards the working class, let alone like a coordinated, like coherent electoral strategy. And so the labor movement exists in a world, not in a world unto itself. I mean, it's obviously still very much interacting with and engaging with the SPD, and there are deep institutional links there. There's not really anything like an organic trade union left linked to a coherent socialist program. There was in West Germany, and there are still like fragments of it here and there. But that would, I think, like to me, that should be the central task of any left organization or left person in Germany. And for a while, I had much more hope that Die Linke could maybe begin to do that and be that bridge. And certainly when Die Linke was formed, there were a significant number of left-wing shop stewards, etc., who left the SPD and came to Die Linke. But those milieux have not really gelled into something coherent. And now I think it's good that we have a party like Die Linke in parliament, but we don't have something like a coherent socialist left intervening in the labor movement, despite the fact that we still have one of the best organized and most powerful labor movements in the world. Kind of an unfortunate historical misalignment.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not to drag this on for too much longer, but I feel that's the similar situation you have in the Nordic countries as well, where you have these incredibly powerful unions, but they're in no way associated with things like Vänsterpartiet or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as unsexy as it might be, that's ultimately the task. And I think in a very long-term sense, that's what Jacobin in the United States thinks about, and that's kind of what we want to think about here, and kind of make the case that old school socialist politics, obviously you can't copy and paste the politics of the 1920s or the 1930s to the 2020s, and that's not what anyone's advocating. But that kind of approach, that organize the working class, organize the overwhelming majority, and organize them to take and hold state power, that sexy or unsexy, that's the most promising path towards human emancipation. And you can talk about it and engage in it without, looking like a role player, a LARPer reenacting the politics of the 1940s, which many ostensibly Marxist groups sometimes do.
What? That happens?
Yeah.
It would turn my camera back on in the Skype video, and it's just me in like full Politburo at like car. Like, what are you talking about? I don't understand.
Yeah, as I'm just like I'm hanging up a photo of Eric Honecker just in like my backdrop.
Right. Well, that's. I think that's been a full episode of Corner Späti. And I think we've covered all the points we want to talk about of Jacobin disrupting the German media landscape to the Red Army disrupting German society.
The German landscape.
German landscape, yeah.
I hope Jacobin has as much success as the Red Army.
All right. And Loren, where can people find you online if they want to do so?
Well, Jacobin can be found at jacobin.de, and I can be found on Twitter at Frau Balhorn.
Nice. Excellent. And there'll be links to that in the description if anyone doesn't know how to spell Frau, like me, maybe.
F-R-O-W.
There's definitely a W in there, yeah.
No, you can spell it in like Irish orthography, so there's gonna be like random like CHs just everywhere and like
the best orthography in the world. How dare you? And with that, we will catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.